So now we're going to go from the outside of the sun into dive into the interiors of stars. So I'm excited to tell you a little bit about one of the most recent problems I've been working on, which is what I call magnetic webs in stellar radiative zones. Okay, so this is related to some of the themes in this conference because basically neutron stars and black holes form from the collapse of massive stars. And significant uncertainty in the initial rotation and magnetization of these objects, which kind of powers their evolution for the rest of their lives, comes from the uncertainty in the progenitor evolution. And the basic questions that I try to answer are: how do stars rotate and internally transport angular momentum? And what are the typical magnetic field strengths, geometry, and topology in stellar interiors? So just as a very quick recap, the current framework for studying stellar evolution is basically assuming that the star is spherically symmetric, so you can write down one-dimensional stellar structure equations and then evolution for the chemical species due to nuclear reaction rates. And then you step through gigayears or gigayears of evolution to see what the star does. And the main kind of summary point I want to make here is that when you solve for the structure of the star, stars end up having these regions that are either convective or radiative. So in the convection zones, the heat flux is carried by turbulent fluid motions, and everything gets very efficiently mixed there. But in radiative zones, the heat flux is carried by photon diffusion, and they're stably stratified. And this is where a lot of the uncertainty is, because if you're stably stratified, it's very hard to move radially, and so it's very hard to mix species, and it's very difficult to kind of understand mixing and transport in stably stratified regions. This is the same issues that Earth's oceans and atmospheres also face. And if you also want to now include rotational evolution of stars, you have to add in another equation solving for the rotation rate as a function of spherical radius. So you assume rotation is approximately uniform on spherical shells, and because the viscosity of stellar plasma and the length scales the viscosities are small and length scales are large, basically you could think of the star as just a giant ball of fluid. Shells are free to differentially rotate relative to each other. And if you imagine you have this local shear that builds up because the star either contracts or expands, or there's some other mechanism that causes the shells to start moving relative to each other, this local shear will excite various instabilities, hydrodynamical, magnetohydrodynamical, and those will then feed back on the differential rotation through turbulent transport. And the way this is modeled in the 1D models is basically through these parameterization of these local diffusion coefficients. So you have a mixing coefficient for chemical mixing and some effective diffusion coefficient for mixing angular momentum. Okay, so this is how something like the MESA stellar evolution code is set up. Okay, and so what the point of this project was to, or the idea behind this paper was to propose a new framework for thinking about rotational evolution in stars. And the basic idea is that the radiative zones are split into two types of regions. The first is what I've mentioned, these differentially rotating regions with turbulent transport and instabilities. And the second are regions that contain what I call magnetic webs. So regions with sufficiently strong magnetic fields that have relaxed into some sort of stable configurations, and the fields are strong enough to enforce co-rotation of the coupled mass shell as the star evolves. So really, if you want to figure out what the rotation rate as a function of stellar radius is in a radiative zone, you have to keep track of where you have these magnetic webs, these regions of strong fields, and there you have a flat rotation rate, and then in between the webs is where you have differential rotation, turbulent transport that's passing angular momentum between the webs. Okay. So this might sound a little contrived, but this is actually, I think, a nice solution to an outstanding observational puzzle for low mass stars. So stars from 1 to 2 solar masses, where we actually have a lot of astroseismic data, we can infer their interior rotation rates. So the basic puzzle is as follows. So on the main sequence, these stars are roughly uniformly rotating. They have convective cores and radiative envelopes. And then when they go into the red giant branch, the helium core contracts, and the red giant envelope expands. And if it was to conserve angular momentum, the core would start rotating up to 100,000 times faster than the envelope. Okay. And in the last 15 years, astroseismic observations have found that these cores rotate only about 10 times faster. And this is an interesting number because I was telling you that there's a significant amount of angular momentum has been extracted from the core. But it's not unity, so it's not complete coupling between the core and the envelope. And it's been very difficult for most models to actually predict this for this population of stars. And more recently, astroseismology has advanced enough to start to infer the fields in these radiative cores, and they find actually quite strong fields. And so up to this point, there's no consistent model that can explain both. I think magnetic webs are a natural solution. And the idea is as follows. So these webs, these magnetic fields are expected in these stars in the core regions because, as I mentioned, on the main sequence, so this is a plot of the enclosed mass on the y-axis, the core is down here, and then time on the x-axis. On the main sequence, these have convective cores. They're generating strong magnetic fields up to 10 to the 5 Gauss. And as the convective zone recedes, as the star evolves, the interior becomes radiative, and you would expect some fraction of these fields to be left behind. And as you evolve on the red giant, your helium core starts to accrete more mass and contract. It's immersed in these fields, and if they're formed some stable configuration, these magnetic fields basically efficiently transport angular momentum and couple the core to the surrounding radiative mantle. And that reduces the spin up of this core. Okay. This is a very different picture than imagining that all these different layers are rotating relative to each other and kind of transporting angular momentum in a turbulent manner out to the envelope. Okay. So the way you should kind of think of a red giant is, as I mentioned, this dense helium core surrounded by a magnetic web that kind of anchors it. It grabs onto a significant fraction of the radiative mantle, and then you have this layer outside the web that can differentially rotate, and then that sets the coupling to the convective envelope. Okay, so I've been mostly waving my hands, but I've implemented this in the MESA stellar evolution code, so I won't go into too much detail. But so this is the rotation rate as a function of stellar radius of 1.5 typical 1.5 solar mass star on the red giant branch. And here I'm showing a few different models. So the black is no angular momentum transport, so I've turned off all transport in the star, and you can see that the core, the helium core region is rotating much faster than the envelope. And then sequentially turn on different types of turbulent transport. So if I turn on the magnetic web, which has tracked the previous location of the convection zone, it basically flattens the rotation rate, redistributes all the angular momentum inside of the web region. But there's a big discontinuity between the web and the turbulent transport region because for the green one, there is no turbulent transport. Then if I sequentially turn on more turbulent transport in this region, based on various prescriptions that people use in the stellar community, you can very easily bring down the core rotation rate to be a factor of 3, factor of 10 larger than the envelope. Okay. Without using, and these are pretty mild prescriptions. Okay. And to compare with data, the typical plot in this community is you plot the period on the y-axis and then some proxy for time on the x-axis. So you have here plotting the radius of the star. So as the star expands and evolves, the radius increases. And the blue is basically captures all the astroseismic data is around here, and the green and the red are kind of various MESA models varying the most sensitive parameter for this model. And basically it agrees quite nicely within order of magnitude. Okay. And my main final plot is basically now if you believe in magnetic webs, that convection zones should leave behind magnetic fields, and these observations are kind of telling us that this should be there. Then if you want to think about evolution of massive stars, you have to then keep track of all of their convection zones. And this is a notoriously difficult problem. So this is a Kippenhahn diagram for a 14 solar mass star. You can see it has many different types of convective regions that kind of appear and disappear. And so if you were to superimpose them, where you might try to put in magnetic webs, and there's a lot of questions of do all convection zones deposit magnetic fields? does it depend on the strength of the convection, on the rotation, things like that. And also, do the webs merge and split when different convection zones appear inside of webs, or two convection zones merge. So yeah, I think that's kind of where we're headed in the stellar community. And the ultimate goal is, when the star explodes, you want to understand what are the magnetic fields and the final rotation in these kind of the core of this massive star. Thank you.
Questions? Yeah. Thanks for this very interesting idea and talk. Nice talk. So what do these webs actually look like? I'm just trying to visualize what these webs kind of look like.
Yeah, so this is something that has not really been explored. The mechanism for the generation of these webs is, you have a convection zones generating, large scale and small scale fields, and as the convection zone recedes, in principle, you should kind of run a receding convection dynamo simulation, which is something that I'm working on. But another thing I'm currently trying to do is, I have a backup slide. So I'm trying to actually construct these webs using adjoint methods. So this is kind of early on in the project, but it's basically you construct like a cost functional. This is basically like the way they design accelerators, and you want to optimize for the stability of configurations, and then you move through like the landscape of all possible magnetic configurations. You try to find ones that are stable, because there are no known current solutions for magnetic configurations with stable stratification. So this is kind of some early progress of what some of these configurations might look like. They're qualitatively these like twisted torus-like things. Obviously, this doesn't have the physics of a receding convection zone, but hopefully, might be representative.
Thanks, very nice talk. Do you expect to form these waves after the pre-main sequence phase?
That's a very good question. So on the pre-main sequence phase, a lot of stars are fully convective, and so it's related to do all convective zones deposit magnetic fields? So on the pre-main sequence, these convection zones are not very rotationally constrained, so they might not have as efficient large-scale dynamos. There's also a difference that they recede upwards, so they start from the core and the convection zone recedes upwards. These, in the main sequence, the convection zone recedes downwards, so there's actually some different symmetry things happening there. But in principle, they can. So like our sun, I think, has a magnetic web because the radiative zone is rotating uniformly, and the only way to really describe that is some trapped magnetic field, and that had to come from a fossil phase, which is these fossil fields from the pre-main sequence. So in principle, these massive stars could also have a web. So if on the pre-main sequence you had a convection zone that went all the way through, you might have another web that's like here. This convection zone destroys part of that web, leaves behind a web here, and then this web might still live in between this region. So you might have two webs, and then there's a turbulent layer between them, and then you have like a tachocline coupling the web to the convection zone. So it's very possible.
Thanks for the very interesting talk. Are there any challenges in applying this to sort of very massive stars that would give fairly massive black holes? So, I mean, of course, there's an interesting discussion right now about the low spins of LIGO-detected black holes and whether that naturally arises from stellar evolution or not. Yeah, can you connect to that problem?
Yes, so like this limit of actually having all of these regions coupled by just magnetic fields actually goes back to some Chris's work, the Kissett and Thompson, and also like Sprout and Finney from 1998. Basically, if you always have full coupling after every convective zone, then actually you should always have a very slow magnetized core at the end. So any single massive star evolution should always give you like a slowly rotating black hole. And so if you have a fast spinning black hole, this is probably due to mergers or binary physics or something like that. But it's very hard to have a single star evolution have fast spinning core.
Thank you for the talk. I just want to follow up on the first question to get some clarity about the magnetic structure here. So first of all, it's a stationary relaxed structure, right? It's not turbulent, there are no motions. So it's an magnetostatic equilibrium essentially, right? And it's ordered on relatively large scale. Is it? Because when you're saying web, right, one assumes that it's some sort of small scale structure, but it sounds like it's a spheromacro, right?
Yeah.
Or something. So it's,
Yeah.
in what sense is it a web?
Yeah, so I guess
So it's some large scale structure. Right?
yeah, so there's an ecology, there's multiple species of spiders, and depending on how organized they are, they form different types of webs. So the most organized webs, they have this like coherent radial structure, and then lots of small things in between. Some are just chaotic. So I'm purposely being vague because we don't know. So the magnetic Reynolds number of the convective turbulence is very, very large, and the ohmic timescales are like much longer than the timescale of the star. So even if you were to initially deposit like a web that has both like very small scale structure and large scale structure, it'll take a while for that small scale structure to ohmically dissipate. So in principle, these could be like messy webs. Alternatively, maybe as a convection zone recedes, you only deposit like the large scale fields, and then maybe it's more organized. So I think that's a very open question.
Well, I guess just to clarify, Kissin and I did come up with a quantitative measure of how much magnetic field would be left behind by a receiving convective layer. And we did compare the strength of the remnant magnetic field and the associated Alfvén time with the evolutionary time scale. And over most, as you were describing, over most of the evolution of a massive star, the remnant magnetic field should be strong enough to, this is based on consideration of magnetic helicity conservation, basically. Should be strong enough to enforce solid rotation. But near the very end, where the burning is going very quickly, that does break down. So.
Yeah. So part of trying to change the terminology is to get the stellar community has not caught up to this idea. So basically, all MESA models are calibrated without taking into account the fact that large-scale fields maintain co-rotation.
Any more questions? Okay, should thank our speaker then.